What's up, squad? This is Brandon from the Bantu Sun. Thank you so much for joining me today. So, as I always say, I think if you are subscribed to this channel and you listen to what I'm putting out on a day-to-day basis, you will have access to some global premier insight into geostrategy. This is a passion. I'm deep in the weeds, constantly analyzing things, and I'm not listening to the politics. The politics is for the people. We are looking at the capacity of states to act and what are they doing with this capacity. And we are at times controversial, at times we are early, but rarely are we wrong on this channels. So I can relate that to something I'm just reading about now with China. And China, for the first time, President Xi will not be attending a BRICS summit. And I said from the beginning, BRICS was trash. It really had no real purpose. It started off, in my opinion, it started off as a Goldman Sachs marketing scheme to get people to buy Goldman Sachs instruments and go to Goldman Sachs conferences. And I think it evolved from there to some of the players trying to get an opportunity, maybe China seen as a possible opportunity to access developing economies in a more easier, trusting way and gain faith to those economies through BRICS. And it has just brought in so many countries with competing interests that really have no common purpose or theme from all over the world, and from Ethiopia, Egypt, just countries across the bandwidth, some richer countries, some of the Gulf states, Southeast Asian nations. It's just a gumbo. It is just this jambalaya of random countries coming together, and it's evolving to what I would deem an anti-West bitch fest. What other purpose do they have other than their organization where the West isn't really a dominating power? And what kind of countries are they attracting? Like, what is the one commonality that they have? And the only commonality I see is that they're not Western. And that is no real strategic pathway to success. And it's no opportunity. When you put all these countries in with competing interests, it's hard to get more things done, or things done of substance. No real opportunity for trade. No real opportunity for security. And China realizing that was a great opportunity to really focus in on their strategy and what their interests are, have really prioritized, I think correctly, where their focus should be. So for the first time, President Xi will not be attending this conference. They're sending a premier. And I look at what President Xi is doing. And what I see he is doing is consistent with the strategy I believe China to do. They're sealing up Central Asia. They were just in Kazakhstan, talking to the stand countries, a C5+1. They're out there with the other stands, all the stands, Kazakhstan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, pretty much solidifying Central Asia and their relationship from a strategic point of view and developing infrastructure and trade there. They've sealed up their support with Pakistan. I always say Pakistan is their greatest ally. They just set up a trilateral meeting with the new administration in Bangladesh, where the former leader of Bangladesh, one of my favorite leaders in the last 10 years, she was ousted, Sheikh Hasina. She was ousted, and I know she was ousted because she was a South or Indian ally. She did amazing things. Amazing things happened for the Bangladeshi economy under her government. She was ousted by spontaneous street protests. So the new government is a lot more aligned to China. India lost the bag on that one. So now India is smothered between Pakistan on one side, one of China's most devout allies. I just read a quote where it is said, one of the Chinese officials said that Pakistan to China is almost identical or similar to Israel to the United States. China has a great vested interest in the current administration of Pakistan. And then you have Bangladesh. Bangladesh being a country of over 100 million people right there next to India, next to some of the more troublesome or quarrelsome regions of the countries where there's a lot of secessionist energies out in that eastern region of India. So you have Bangladesh, a relatively large Islamic country, right next to India over there. So China is right there on the shoulders of India, digging deeper into Central Asia, cutting that route off, securing their pathway to Europe pretty much, and make sure that it's an unfettered access for whether pipeline through trade or security purposes. And now I just read that China has just welcomed Premier of Singapore, and they're pushing for deeper ties and bilateral relationships with Singapore. And as I said, this is a strategy. These countries that China is trying to align with, they are really making China, it's highlighting China understanding of their geographical vulnerabilities, which is consistent with what we believe their geographic vulnerabilities are. I believe China is an island and it needs to protect itself because India has its number. Right now, India, I'm not sure Modi's going to give India that leadership. They need to go to the next level, but he's provided a leadership up until now for them to ascend. But because right now, I think Modi has done a good job of relatively stabilizing India. But from a geostrategic point of view, I think India has been lacking, whether we're talking about the relationships with their neighbors. I think India needs to solidify under their leadership to South Asia, from Maldives to Bangladesh to Pakistan. I think there's a way to do that. And what happened with Modi and the way they just handled the terrorist attack that occurred in Kashmir was completely wrong. Was completely wrong in my opinion. And I think they went in way too muscular. And there was a great opportunity right now. If anything, you just want to be great neighbor to mitigate the opportunity for what China did, which is come in and take out Bangladeshi leadership. I have no confirmation that it's occurred, but it has a pattern of what it could have been. So you have a situation where China needs to secure Central Asia because Turkey is also going to be an issue for China. Russia is going to be an issue for China. Despite their lovey-dovey situation right now, I think Russia and Turkey and India are going to be a central issue for China. And they all surround Central Asia, which is a flank to the northwest. Then they're going in Southeast Asia. They need this key shipping lane, the Straits of Malacca. And they're going to use their Chinese roots. Remember, a lot of successful Chinese diaspora live within Southeast Asia. And ASEAN is a situation. So they're going to be looking to build, I think, especially on that Indochina Peninsula, looking to solidify those relationships. They already going to have a strong relationship with Myanmar. They need Myanmar to access the other sides of the straits. They already accessing Cambodia because Cambodia and Laos, because they're small enough demographically where China can really come in and benefit them. Vietnam is always going to be a fence. They're a natural barrier or a natural competitor to China. And Thailand leans a little bit more west. And that brings us down to Malaysia and Singapore. And Singapore, in the history between these two countries, Singapore, this was all British. Singapore used to be a part of Malaysia. And Singapore split. And Singapore is one of my great success stories of economic development. They were early on, they didn't fall to, even when communism was big, whether you're talking about Pol Pot, Cambodia, or you're talking about Ho Chi Minh, Vietnam, Singapore didn't succumb to the communist scourge that took over this Indochina Peninsula. They held fast, they were pragmatic, they were prudent, they were trailblazers. They pursued capitalism and free markets in an Asian way. And the key difference between Malaysia and Singapore is Singapore separated because Singapore was 70% Chinese, whereas Malaysia were majority Malay. So the Chinese in Singapore felt as though there were going to be a lot of prejudicial or policies that would take away from the successful Chinese diaspora that occupied within Malaysia. And they didn't want to be a part of some of the social programming that Malaysian leadership, because of the Malay majority, had in mind for the Chinese minority. And Singapore separated. And they separated, of course, and it was a multi-ethnic country, it's majority Chinese, but you also have your Indians and Malays that occupy Singapore as well. And Singapore was a great economic success story. Of course, it's going to have its flaws, but relatively speaking, it is a phenomenal success story. One of the highest GDP per capita in the world with little to no natural resources. And they sit there right at the Straits of Malacca, right at the access point where the Indian Ocean meets the Pacific Ocean, and this trade between the Middle East to East Asia is so important for China through that South China Sea. So you have a situation where what I said was correct. We believe that China's going to lean on these historical roots and groups of Chinese minorities within ASEAN to build relationships and develop trade. And now you see China taking that opportunity and going where? To Singapore. I think it's a key missing piece for the Chinese alliance to secure supremacy within East Asia or around this island. Of course, you're going to want Pakistan, which access to Central Asia. The less Central Asian problems, the better. But the real key player in Central Asia, I believe, around that region for China is going to be Pakistan. Bangladesh is a great addition, but Pakistan is vital. Myanmar is vital. Singapore, vital. And now Japan. So when I see that China is able to do what India can't do with Pakistan, and China is able to put those historical grievances that they have with their relationship to Japan to the side, because that's what you want to do if you're China, is you really want to convert that bag of rice. You want to convert, as Sun Tzu say, a bag of rice, your enemy's bag of rice is worth 3 of your own. So you want to convert that Japanese, that American ally right there in Japan, because you convert Japan, South Korea is going to fall. So if China can convert Japan and break them, you don't have to be the best of friends, but make them lukewarm. Make Japan lukewarm to an American alliance, which they can do with their market by opening up their market and giving the Japanese access and making them feel welcome. They're closer geographically. Japan don't want the threat of China possibly coming back to them. So you have this situation where if China's able to really make Japan lukewarm, I think that will be absolutely revolutionary for the geopolitical stage that is happening around China. I still think China and the United States are natural allies and they need each other. But the point of the matter is who has the leverage in the relationship. Right now, America has that leverage in the relationship. It's a lot of things China want to do that they can't do. They're still dependent on U.S. to secure sea lanes. They still got this annoying Taiwan issue. They still have a situation where you have American nuclear subs operating in South Korea. So it's there's still a situation. They still have this angst where as soon as they get in a tiff with Australia over the most marginal things, America wants to send reinforcements or ships out to in the Pacific. So these are little annoying pains that they have where they can really focus on a true enemy, or I think their true competitor and their true vulnerability, which is India. So just highlighting this Chinese strategy once again, because you can see it playing out and they're going at it ferociously. As I said, I think a lot of these Trump things, coming back from the global stage, he's conceding a lot. And he's really, and there's no real checks. I can't think of one check under the Trump administration to put America in a stronger leverage position with dealing with China. We saw the failure of the tariff situation. And it's not one thing that I can say that Trump put his administration in, put the current administration in to develop a more favorable or up the ante with India. And I think these are the two countries in the 21st century on the back half that are really going to hit some strides. And they're really going to be hard to deal with, primarily India. But definitely talking to China as an equal, those skills are starting to tilt. And it's going to be a certain point where that tilts so far where right now, the question is going to be, how can China assist with American interests? But those scales will tip to where China will say, how do America, United States, help with China's interests? So Still following this story. Love to hear your comments below. Of course, like, share, subscribe if you enjoy the content. Until then, until next time, take care. Bantu up.